Welcome back to the channel, guys. The channel's name is Clarence K4. You can follow me on Instagram at Clarence K4, and I also have a TikTok, so I don't post videos there, but if you want to follow me there, you can follow me there too. So today's video is going to be the feeding of the 5,000, the miracle of the feeding of the 5,000. And this is a very significant miracle because it takes place in all four of the Gospels. It's recorded in all four of the Gospels. And we are going to look at what happened before the miracle, where the miracle took place, and then we are going to look at three significant lessons I believe we can get out of this passage. So let's go ahead and dive right into this video. First, we're going to look at what happened before this miracle took place. And we're going to look at Matthew chapter 14, verse 10. And it says, "And he sent and beheaded John in the prison." Then we're going to skip down a couple verses to verse 12 and 13, which says, "And his disciples came and took up the body and buried it and went and told Jesus. When Jesus heard of it, he departed thence by ship into a desert place apart. And when the people had heard thereof, they followed him on foot out of the cities." So to give you a little bit of background, Herod the Tetrarch is hearing all the miracles and all the wonderful things that Jesus is doing. And he also hears rumors about people saying that it's John the Baptist resurrected from the dead. And Herod's like, John the Baptist resurrected? I beheaded John. And we see that after Herod beheads him, John the Baptist's disciples, they go and they bury the body, and then they go to try to find Jesus. And I believe, this is back in the olden days, so they didn't have cars. So traveling was by foot or by animal. So it took a little while. And they went and they found Jesus. And when they found Jesus, they told him, "Hey, Herod beheaded John, and there are rumors going around that you are John the Baptist reborn or resurrected from the dead." And then Jesus' disciples return from doing miracles in his name, and they tell him all that they've done in his name. And he takes his disciples away privately, and I believe he takes them away to kind of get some alone time to really comprehend and just really have some time to process what he's been told. So that's what was taking place before the miracle took place. Now we're going to look at where did this miracle take place. And we see in Matthew it says a desert place. But we're going to look in Luke chapter 9 verse 10 because it's more specific specific in the location. And it says, "And the apostles, when they were returned, told him all that they had done, and he took them and went aside privately into a desert place belonging to the city called Bethesda." Now, I thought that this was really, really cool. As I was studying as I was studying and preparing for this, I found out what Bethsaida, I said Bethesda, I'm sorry, Bethsaida means. And Bethsaida means a house of fruits or of food. And I thought that that was so cool. You know, Jesus fed the 5,000, did the miracle of the 5,000 in this city, in this desert, that's in the city that is a house of fruits and food. I thought that that was awesome. I thought that that was cool. But that's not the only thing that's significant about Bethsaida. Bethsaida is also where 3 of Jesus's disciples are from. Andrew, Peter, and Philip. This is their hometown. So I thought that that was pretty cool too. So now that we've seen what happened before this miracle took place, we saw where this miracle took place. Now let's look at 3 significant lessons we can learn from this miracle of the feeding of the 5,000. The first lesson the first thing we see is the disciples doubted. And we're going to look at the second half of John 6:9, which says, but what are they amongst so many? So we see, to give you a little background, the crowd followed him. We saw that in Matthew. The crowd followed him out of the city, out of the cities, into this desert place. And you know, even though Jesus wanted some alone time, you know, he had compassion on this group of people, this multitude of people, and he was healing them, he was teaching them, and they stayed with him all day. And then the disciples are like, hey, they've been with us all day and they haven't had anything to eat. Send them away so they can eat. And Jesus says, no, like, you feed them. And they say, well, all we have is 5 loaves and 2 small fish. And that's where we see, but what are they amongst so many? They doubted that God could use that little bit and do a great and mighty thing, or an impossible thing, with the 5 loaves and the 2 fish. And I know that we kind of don't give the disciples any slack because they were with Jesus, and how could they doubt Jesus? But it's easy to say that they doubted and blame them for doubting, because we see the end product. We have the whole story. We know what he does, but they didn't know. So we really need to take this as a lesson. You know, we saw in the past Jesus did the impossible, and people doubted him. So we know that Jesus did the impossible back then. So why can't he do the impossible now? So the lesson here is that we need to not be like the disciples. We need to learn from the disciples and, you know, trust God and not doubt him. So secondly, we see God can use our little bit in a great and mighty way if we let him. And we're going to look at the whole verse of John 6:9, which says, there is a lad here which hath 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish, but what are they amongst so many? So we see this little boy just had his little lunch for himself, you know, a lunch for one. And he said, you know, I don't have much. He probably heard the disciples talking and being like, hey, you know, Jesus is telling us to feed these people, feed these 5,000 people, but we don't have anything. And he goes and like, I have these 5 loaves and 2 fish. I know it's not much, but Jesus, I know you can do something with it. I have faith in you. I trust that this little bit you can do a great and mighty thing. And it's just so amazing to see that this little boy, this lad, had so much faith and trusted God with the little bit. He had a little lunch for one, and he trusted that God would turn that lunch for one into a feast for many. And that's exactly what Jesus did. You know, Jesus turned that lunch for one into a feast for many. And it wasn't just a little bit of food for the 5,000. No, it was, he fed them until they were full. All 5,000 people ate until they were full. And that brings me to the last point. Don't waste God's blessings. So he fed them until they were full, but he didn't stop there. You know, he told the disciples to gather up the leftovers, and they gathered up 12 baskets full of leftovers. And I think the lesson here, and it's pretty cool because God is teaching them, you know, don't let things go to waste. And when God blesses us, when we give our little bit and God uses it in a great and mighty way, and he does the impossible and he blesses us abundantly, we shouldn't waste that. We shouldn't squander those blessings. We should gather them up. And that's what God is teaching the disciples here is, hey, you know, I did this miracle and it was amazing, but we have extra food. Don't let it go to waste. Let's gather up the basket. Let's gather up the leftovers. You know, don't waste the leftovers. So that's really the 3 significant lessons that I got from this feeding of the 5,000 miracle. I really enjoyed studying this, and it was great, and I hope that this was very thought-provoking for you, and next time you read the feeding of the 5,000, you'll look at it differently. I know I thought that was really cool. I never knew about Bethsaida before, and then I never thought about the lesson that Jesus is teaching the disciples and teaching us in gathering up the leftovers after everybody was ate until they were full. So thank you so much. That is it. That's it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for tuning into the channel. If you liked the video, please hit that like button. If you aren't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. And I will see you in the next video. Remember, God loves you.